The Edwards Syndrome Association is a 100% volunteer 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to advocacy, equal care, education, and rights of people with Edwards syndrome. The ESA strives to empower parents to advocate while working to help break barriers for those with Edwards syndrome. This podcast is for educational purposes only. For all medical advice, please speak with your medical providers. Thank you for joining us and for breaking barriers with us.
Welcome to the Breaking Barriers podcast, where we talk all things Edwards syndrome, special needs, therapy, disability, and everything in between.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Breaking Barriers podcast, DadPod 3. This is Robert Polisek here with an angel dad, Brandon Bingham. How you doing, Brandon?
Doing well. How are you tonight, Robert?
I'm doing well. We're hanging in there as I know you guys are as well. So, Brandon, as we were touching on before we signed on here, you have a fantastic story to tell in regards to your family and all that you guys do now, but also continuing to carry on the legacy of Betty Bell, as we used to call her, or still do, as I'm sure you do. So I'm just going to kick it off to you. I'm going to let you kind of roll with your story, and let's just start at the very beginning of kind of when you and your wife, Angel, found out about the diagnosis of Betty and just kind of all that entailed from there.
Wow, I feel like I told this story a million times, and over the last year, I don't feel like I've told it that very many times. So
Well, here's your chance to
yeah,
to bring out those cobwebs, my friend.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's therapeutic to tell it, and it's also painful to tell it.
Understood.
As you kind of get into it. And so I think the first moment I remember, we went through a really bad and nasty miscarriage like in October of the year before. And so we were really just kind of at that point where, is this what we were meant to do? Is this right? Is this God's timing? All of that. And so I remember being able to tell our other two kids that we were having our third kid. And so we took a trip and we went to Texas and all the fun stuff. And I think we had like a cake or something, or, something to that had one of the ultrasound pictures in it. And so that was the moment that we just couldn't wait to share that, and just their expressions and their excitement and their shock and, everything like that of our two older kids, was just something that was I'll never forget that moment, because they'd already drawn and built that connection, that relationship with their daughter, with their sister. And so Betty Bell Bingham was just already alive and well long before she was even born, which was just a crazy kind of, almost out of body experience from that moment forward. And so, we waited a long time to be able to even tell anybody that we were having a kiddo, because we were old and all the things that you can't do to have kids. Right. And so,
So how old were before you carry on? How old were your son and daughter when you told them about this? Because that's gonna be very pertinent to your story since then.
I think they were 10 and 8.
Okay, so they were very cognizant of all that was going on, and they were really aware of even the unfortunate miscarriage the year prior as well.
Correct. Yeah, I think they were 10 and 7. So Bailey would have turned 8 in the middle of all of it.
Okay.
So yeah, they were 10 and or 9 and 7. I'd have to look at exact dates and everything. It all kind of
Right.
blurs together, but they were 10 and 8 when kind of everything kind of happened. So they were old enough, and they were, very connected in our community. We were very connected in our community when it all happened. But so then the first moment I remember just really vividly, we had followed the doctor that had delivered Grayson. So Grayson's my oldest, and my son, and so he would have been right around 10 years old when this all kind of went down. And so he he had like the umbilical cord wrapped around his like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
neck when he was like born. And the doctor just immediately like lassoed him out and boom, like ripped off the umbilical cord off his neck and everything was fine. No big deal. And I was just like, that's just what they do every day. These amazing
Right.
medical professionals that, just, they get some of the worst and some of the best and, all of it in between. And so when we saw that, we were just, okay, that's where we want to have our third kid is with her. And so we followed her. And so it was a different hospital than we had delivered our first two kiddos. So it was a different experience through, the ultrasounds and everything like that. And so we didn't see her the day that we were having the ultrasound. We didn't know anybody that was there. It was kind of it wasn't a great experience that day that we had the ultrasound. And we immediately got the kind of fear out of the doctor. We got just something is not right. And you just immediately wanted to start asking questions. You immediately wanted to just challenge. And we didn't know what we didn't know. Like we didn't understand why the fear and why just basically the just kind of like compression of everything happened. And so, we waited then I think probably a week until we could then have our next ultrasound at a high risk specialist. And
about how far along was Angel at this time?
So this would have been in probably about March or April, and she was due in September.
Okay, so she was around her like between the first and second trimester.
Yeah.
Okay,
somewhere in that ballpark.
This is fairly early on.
I feel like I should yell at her and, hey, what are the dates and the specifics? She would be able to.
Okay, but, this is a dad pod. We just go off of what our memory reminds us of.
And these are our stories, so like they're all true.
Exactly, 100%.
And so as we kind of went to that high risk specialist, we went to Blank Children's Hospital in Des Moines. It's kind of the the specialty hospital in the Des Moines metro in Iowa. And so I just felt this sense of comfort and just that we were seeing probably the best doctor, the best child doctor, around. And so it was just like, God's got this. Like we're here. And it just, that appointment went completely off the rails. And so we knew there was something potentially, but it's just like, okay, now we're in the specialist. Now we've got everything taken care of. And when we went to that specialist, I remember we walked out of there with a book that was, how do you tell your other children your loved one's going to die?
Oh, wow.
That was, and I'm sure that wasn't the exact, but that is like what I took away with
That's what you felt. Yeah,
like
for sure.
And so we didn't get a ton of answers there. But I remember us leaving and going to eat lunch or trying to,
right.
And just sitting at a park and just really contemplating what's next. And we didn't have the answers. We just were told that like there was no way that Blank Children's Hospital was going to be willing or able to take on this challenge that was Betty Bell Bingham. And I just remember just that lost, sick, just how do you go about your everyday when this child that you're just so love already is so undetermined. And so just, it's like the TBA, like the TBD on a schedule. It was just like, what? And so, we kind of at the end of the appointment, the doctor was just like, what do you want to do? Like, and it just kept feeling like the only answer that I kept hearing was comfort care. Right. Comfort care. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, what are we doing here? Like, I didn't understand it. I didn't get it.
And this is 15 weeks in. Like she's still, growing and brewing, for a lack of a better term, right? So
yeah, I think
did they even throw out trisomy 18 or anything along those lines yet?
No, I don't think they even,
So I'm curious what they were even basing that off of.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there was just so many medical complexities that they were just scared of the whole being.
Right, right.
And so then finally we got referred to the University of Iowa. And so the University of Iowa specialty clinics, hospital, like you see it at the end of every Hawkeye football game at the end of the first quarter when they wave to the children's hospital.
Yep, yep.
And so again, that sense of comfort, that sense of they've got this when we drove to Iowa City that morning was immediately met like with a completely different approach when we saw the cardiologist. And so, we had the first half of the day were appointments with like specialty and specialist and things like that. And then the second half was with more of the, like who would deliver the child and, different side
Left
that would be
hand.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
Okay.
the first part of the day, we got the normal bedside doctor, probably amazing doctor, you know, probably world class and everything, but his bedside manners were not.
Right.
And
I have experienced many of those myself. Trust me.
yeah, and I would imagine in a time and place, this is the guy you would want taking care of you or your children. And it was just so interesting because he's just like, why are you even here? And that was the message that kept coming. And I was like, and so me being a business owner and me having to solve problems every day that I have no idea what's coming or, never
What the outcome's going to be.
never
Yeah.
seen the problem before or
Right, right.
any idea, no roadmap. And so this was the exact same situation. So I just quickly started asking him questions and he quickly did not want to answer any of my questions. And so I just kept probing and probing and probing. And, I think I'd already built a relationship with the nurse and I'd already built a relationship with the front office person. And they had all went to a concert that night before in Des Moines, Iowa. So we'd already built this really cool relationship. And so they were all just like, this guy, like him and Angel, like they've already had this unbelievable, we've already built this relationship. We want to take care of him. And this cardiologist was just like, I think you should just leave. Like I don't think there isn't a chance. And so then I latched on to there isn't a chance. And I was like, explain to me why there isn't a chance. So I went the other way and really just started like, tell me why. And so finally I couldn't really get a clear answer out of him. So finally I said, what will my daughter die of first? And he just stopped and he just looked at me and he was just like, well, I'm the
That's heavy.
I'm the
Yeah.
cardiologist, so she will die from her heart issues. And so I said, okay, so what do we fix first? And he's like, I, yeah. And it was kind of over and
Right.
he was just gone. And
Mhm.
so we went to lunch and he kind of like a little bit started along the conversation of like, I don't think she'll be able to breathe. No idea where that's coming from, what that means. And so then we went
Right.
to Dr. Google and we just started Googling everything we could at lunch and just where are we going? What are we doing next? Like if this place won't take care of us, where are we going? And so all the things. And so we came in really charged up for our second half of the appointment that day. And
Mhm.
we just had an amazing doctor then that afternoon. And she was like, I don't know. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't know if the University of Iowa will let me take this on. And I'm getting like, what are we taking on? Like, what is happening? And so then she really kind of just unpeeled the onion and really started to get to the spot of like, here's what's going on. Here's why everybody's so freaked out. Here's why everybody's so scared. And she's like, your daughter has a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. And so so her diaphragm has not been formed. And so everything, all of her intestines, everything is up in her chest cavity. So when
Wow.
somebody sees your daughter on an ultrasound, it doesn't look real. They don't think there's any way that your daughter will survive her tiny, tiny body to be able to have all of these parts up in her chest cavity. And nobody knows how to handle it. Nobody knows where to start. Nobody knows what to do next. And so then she furthered it a little bit further, and she said, because of all those things that are up in her chest cavity, they're all on top of her left lung.
Mm.
So with everything being up inside that chest cavity, the left lung isn't able to be formed or be able, like, she can't breathe out of her left lung. And she goes, but that's not probably the worst element of all this. And we're just like, what else? Like, she goes, well, her heart's on the right side of her body because of all of this. And because the heart's on the right side of her body, the right lung is impacted as well.
Mm.
So I think you're playing a breathing game. And so that was all I really needed in that moment. Was she had told us all the bad, but then that last kind of little phrase of, I think you're playing the breathing game. I then went on a, crusade, and us as a family, that how do we defend the fort that is the Bingham family? And at that point it was, go find the expert in the breathing game.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went on every Facebook group that you can imagine, and every specialty side of it. And still, trisomy 18 had not really been
mentioned. Yeah.
No, it had really, like, there was so much complexity that I don't think people even had brought that in.
Right.
And so then the doctor and the nurse at the University of Iowa hospitals had done different stints or internships at different hospitals. And one of them that they recommended that they thought might have an expert that could understand this and potentially take it on was at like the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, so CHOP.
Yep.
And they're like, I think that's the place you need to go. And then somebody else was like, but there's this expert at the University of Michigan, and so then there's all of these kind of experts started to show up. And then the one that continued to rise to the top was Dr. K's at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so we pounded down the door of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, and we got to Dr. K's team. And when we got to Dr. K's team, they immediately met us like we were humans.
That's awesome.
And they immediately understood the despair we were in. They understood. And so we're in July now. So all of this has happened, from April, March, May, to then into now it's the 4th of July. And I remember sitting in a meeting inside my conference room at our office, and we had the nicest, the coolest conference room ever, and it's all glass and you can see everything. And my wife sent me a text or called. I don't remember exactly which one happened, but it was, I just booked our plane tickets to go to Florida. And whatever you're doing Thursday, you better cancel. And so canceled whatever I was doing that Thursday. And me and Angel flew to St. Petersburg to meet Dr. K's and team and to go through that first evaluation to see what was what. And at that moment, then, so once we got on the plane, we got down there, it became real in a hurry. And we had an all-day appointment with Dr. K's. And you could tell he was the expert. And so Dr. K's is an expert in the CDH side. So in the congenital diaphragmatic hernia side, like he fixes, I think he's, at that time, that would have been years ago now, a couple years ago, he was like over 600 cases that he had solved.
Wow.
600, positive, and the toughest of the tough and the craziest of the crazy. And you could just tell he had a sense about him, and he had the whole floor of the 8th floor of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital was Dr. K's floor. It was like a NFL franchise.
It was like his lair.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah.
And just people that he had grown and built up under him and around him, his defensive and offensive coordinators and,
Mhm.
all the things. And so just an amazing team that immediately we connected with. And so I won't bore all of the facts, but I just remember sitting in his conference room at that first appointment, and he's like, "You have to take the test before you leave." And I'm like,
Take the test.
"What test?" Like, and so
Yeah.
then I think we had about a half hour knockout drag out argument that like we came down here. He said he was the expert. He was the guy that could solve all the world's problems. And he didn't exactly say it that way, but he said, "I do believe I am the person that can handle this the best." In our meeting, and I 100% believe him. And now to this day, I agree. I think he gave us the best chance and gave us something that we'll always treasure.
Mhm.
And so he was like, "But I have to know if she has trisomy 18."
Interesting. He like called that out specifically.
Yep. He's like, everything that, like all the precursors, all that, like it all says trisomy 18.
Interesting.
And
Did he like run an ultrasound by himself? Like if
no, he had somebody else run the
and then
ultrasound.
he looked at it. Okay.
Yeah. And all, and he had seen everything else before we got there. I think he'd
Mhm.
already kind of known. And I don't remember to that point if I think at the University of Iowa, there had been some trisomy 18 talk.
Well, was there like a blood test done or anything along those lines, or like a genetics test, like that they do, like in not genetics test. Gina's gonna freak out on me that I'm not remembering this, but like
And
the test that you can do that, like once they reach, I think like 6 or 7 months, that you can do, or even earlier than that.
I don't think we had anything like that done. I think we
Okay.
had really kind of pushed that, like, it didn't matter to us. So, like, please don't even bore us with the.
Right, right.
And so I don't think we had anything. Like, I don't remember back to those exact moments, but I don't think there was anything even. And I don't think we understood what trisomy 18 was at all.
Right, right.
I know we had an Iowa friend whose son had trisomy 18, and our kids had said prayers for this kid just randomly because they'd seen a story on the news or on Facebook. And so for, a couple months, our kids said prayers for
Mhm.
Alexander the Great.
Oh yeah.
And it was just, it's amazing how that world ticks and how that clock happens and everything. And so, when Dr. Kays was saying, "I need you to take this trisomy 18 test," I was just like, "What?" And it was more of like a genetics test than just a
Uh-huh.
straight trisomy 18 test, but it was going to determine if she had trisomy 18. And the thing that I remember pretty vividly was I just got the feeling that if she had trisomy 18, the care was going to be different. And so that was the thing that I wanted to challenge the most. And so I remember kind of wrapping the conversation. Dr. K's kind of got after me, and he was like, "Are you gonna play doctor? If you come down here, are you the doctor or am I the doctor?"
Okay.
And I had to relent, and "You're the doctor. That's why we're coming to see you." He goes, "Then let me be the doctor."
Okay. But I'm
And
also the dad, and we're gonna be
it,
working as a team here, you know.
and so he understood that. So we had
Mhm.
that conversation, and then finally, the only thing I could really get across to really feel like state my case and my point was, you said you're the best. You said you give us the best option, the best chance. Will you just treat my daughter for what she has? Will you just let her tell us?
Mhm.
And he kind of sat back in his chair and he kind of was like, "So you just want whatever Betty tells me I'm going to do?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he kind of shook his head and was like, "I can agree with that." And I'm like, "That's all I'm asking.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what her declaration or what her diagnosis, or treat what will kill her today
Right.
and let her tell us."
Mhm.
And at that point, I will be very happy. And so he's like, if you take the test.
Well, I'm still curious. What is this test?
And so then we went and took the test, and the test was pretty invasive. And so it's a needle all the way straight down in.
Oh, it's a physical test. Oh,
Yes.
I went to school, brain.
Yeah.
Like, what were we
No,
hitting? We popping?
no,
It's an
no.
ACT test. What are we doing here? Okay,
It
this
was
is the
definitely a
genetics
physical
test.
test.
Got it. All right, I'm
Uh,
circling back the wagons on you
a
now.
straight needle. You can see it on the ultrasound. You can see the needle
Yeah,
inside
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
wife, and you see my daughter, and it was
Uh,
wild.
yeah.
And so that was, I think, like somewhere the first or second week of July. And he had told us very clear that like your daughter's, or she's set to be born early to mid-September.
Mhm.
You have to be down here by the end of July for me to give the care that I need to. Like I have to see you into July and all August to make sure that like I can give you the best chance possible because she might need to be born at this certain time. She might need, like, and I need all hands on deck, and I can't have her being somewhere else and then being brought to me. Like it's just not going to work.
Right, right,
So she needs to be born here, and she needs to have all of the medical staff on standby and everything. I need my team to be able to do this. And so we're like, no problem. Like we'll find a way to be here at the end of July. And we had no idea how we were going to do that. And
right.
so we decided how we were going to do that in the next couple weeks. And we bought a motorhome and we loaded up our 8 and 10-year-old kid, and we said we were going to Florida. And
Mhm.
so they were going to start the school year in Florida. And, the diagnosis and prognosis was that, we might get a couple weeks at max with her.
Right.
And so we had planned, come down here and just let her tell us whatever that looks like, whatever that is. And then we'll load that motorhome up and we will come back to Iowa and hopefully she's with us. But more than likely, we've probably just went through whatever this story is and this chapter will be. And so we just kept holding out hope that she would be riding in that motorhome home with us, and how we were going to do that, I have no idea.
Right.
But that was the plan. So we loaded that motorhome and we were getting ready to leave, and Dr. Case called. And I think I was sitting at the oil change getting, the other car that we were going to drive behind
Mhm.
the motorhome changed. And he's just like, even if you're my own son, I'm telling you not to come.
Wow.
And that
This
was
is this is after the test. This is like the
he
results that he got.
he'd got the
Okay.
results of the test. It was like the day before we were leaving. So it's like, July 29th.
Right.
And he's just like, I can't physically like have you come down here. Your daughter has trisomy 18. Now you complicate trisomy 18. You complicate, her congenital heart disease. You complicate her diaphragmatic hernia. It just, there's no way, man. Like, I don't know how we do this. Like the medical world might even laugh at me for trying to do this. And so it was just a really interesting conversation of what do we do then?
Hmm.
And he's like, I've really grown over our short period of time to know you, that I'm inspired by you. Like I'm excited to get to know you and understand your story. And I was excited to be able to take on this challenge, but I don't think, like, I'm not going to be able to use all of the tools I need to. Like the hospital probably won't let me. And so I'm like, what's that mean? And he's like, well, your daughter's probably going to need ECMO. And that's probably one of the things, like the ECMO treatments and stuff is probably what's going to keep her alive for me to be able to get her lungs to a state that she can actually utilize and be able to get to that day 7 or that day 14 to be able to truly have the surgery and put her diaphragmatic hernia and put everything back together the way it needs to be.
Mhm.
but I think I'm gonna need ECMO to do that. Like, and that's where I have like the toughest patients go on ECMO, and he's like, the hospital's already told me that I cannot use those resources on your daughter. And so then that kind of got into the trisomy 18 side. And so then he kind of started walking down the trisomy 18 path to try to explain it even further to me. And he's like, here's what the medical community says about trisomy 18. It is a lethal disease.
Mhm.
And so you are termed lethal. Like Betty Bell Bingham is termed lethal. I don't, the medical community does not look at that she is fit for life.
Mhm.
And at that moment, I just, kind of sunk into my seat. And then I don't know where the spirit came from, but it came. And I was just like, can you still treat her for what she tells you? Can you still take care of what Betty tells you today? Like when she's born, she's going to tell us
Right.
one way
Right.
or another.
Right.
Like, and you still treat it for what it is. And he just started kind of like almost uncomfortably laughing on the phone. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Okay, you caught me.
I
But
can't. Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not how this works because this is lethal. And I said,
For the
just,
record, I can't stand that word anymore. Like it's turned into one of those. It's the N word. It's the R word. Like when I hear that word, my skin crawls
ah,
because we were told by someone that Mia they didn't think Mia's diagnosis was lethal, and this was 2 weeks before she was born. And looking back, my wife and I are like, "Oh, that's what he was referring to." So that's the whole reason why we're having this conversation is to turn that tide. So so I'll let you carry on, but I just had to get that in there that word bothers the living heck out of me.
yeah. And
Which I know it does you too,
me
because
too.
with
Because,
your response.
yeah, it just, I couldn't even fathom this unborn kid was determined already. It
Right,
just,
right.
and so then as I'll fast forward a little bit, so then we went, like we came to Florida
Mhm.
and Dr. K's, I remember the first time we saw him, he was just like, "You're crazy." You
You're
know,
damn
like
right.
like like you bought a motorhome. Had never drove the thing, had never drove a motorhome, I don't think, in my life. And I drove it all the way across the country with my father-in-law. Like, and we found a kids resort in Sarasota, Florida, and we were going to stay
Uh-huh.
there and we were going to give our kids a pretty awesome experience for a month of this is vacation, but I still had to work. I was selling and closing deals. I think I closed almost $1 million worth of deals from a captain's chair of a motorhome. Like I grew a
Incredible.
beard. Like so many random things happened in that time frame. My team at Bing Bang was amazing in how they supported me and how they, allowed me to go chase
Mhm.
Betty and go chase life.
That
And
was your football team going up against, I mean, trying to basically coincide and collide with Dr. K's. Not in the sense of how a gridiron battle is, but in some sense, yeah. I mean, you were quarterbacking one and Dr. K's is quarterbacking the other for the betterment of Betty Bell.
yeah, and I think the coolest part when we got to Florida is once we were here, it wasn't us against anybody.
Right.
It was ultimately Dr. K's was Bill Belichick of Betty Bell Bingham,
Hmm.
of Team Betty, of Battle Like Betty. And he became, while he thought it was crazy and there were moments and everything, like he became our quarterback and he was going to do whatever it meant because we were there. We were willing to fight and he knew he was the best person for the job and he was going to give everything he had to, the success of Betty Bell in that moment and ultimately let her tell us. And we went through a lot of really tough moments in that month of August. Like, is she born natural? Will that kill her? Because
Right.
trisomy 18 kid is so weak and so fragile and so lethal, right?
Mhm.
Um, can they be born natural?
They
Yeah.
can't.
And can't, do they have to be a C-section? Well, actually, if they're born as a C-section, will they even come to life?
Right.
Because they haven't came through the natural process. And so there were so many back and forth decisions, moments, thoughts, ideas, craziness. And I do believe there were a lot of moments in doctors that we crossed that they almost felt like I think their right or their prerogative was that
The only way.
the the medical complexity of Betty, the lethal nature of trisomy 18, they were going to be God. They were going to determine the outcome.
Mhm.
And it wasn't up for Betty to determine. It wasn't up for Brandon or Angel to determine. It was up to them. And they thought, yeah, you should just have her born natural and you should just immediately go to comfort care. And, there were some doctors we saw that I think they were just like, gosh, I can't believe we're wasting resources on these people. And you could feel when those doctors were in the room. You could feel when we had an appointment with them. And, I probably wasn't as good of a read because I believe the best in everybody, I think. But Angel, like, there was one doctor I remember when we left, and she was just like, I certainly hope she's not the one that's in the delivery room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the
like,
mama bear was already on. That's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I just realized that I had to, and we wrote every day, like on a Facebook page.
Mhm.
We were really just trying to get our thoughts, emotions out, but also just share the journey.
Right.
And inside of it, I think the biggest thing that I learned was everything in life. As a sports minded human being that had to compete for every position and, wanted to be the best in everything, but it was ultimately in this moment, it was not about the destination. It was
It was
about the
important.
journey.
Yep.
And it was so hard for me to, I was so focused on the destination of Betty being healthy and successful that I was going to lose the journey, that whatever that moment was going to be the most special thing possible.
Mhm.
And so I just stopped and was like, I just got to be in the moment. Wherever my 2 feet are is where I'm meant to be today.
Mhm.
And however good and however bad that is, just embrace that for what it is today. And so that's what we did. And we really just kind of moved forward with that mantra. And it just really, it was really just a lifeline and a lifeblood of what we needed to be able to do to move forward because it just allowed us to be in the moment.
For
And,
sure.
and I mean, Mia's in the hospital right now, and
Mhm.
it's hard to to do these things. It's hard to do life. It's hard, but like we've been given the opportunity to do this.